my goodness. Well, I guess it's the McGinty thing, because he had that whole thing memorized. The Irish stick together, huh, Dave? Well, let's start by clapping for Dave and thanking him for his leadership and commitment. I also want to start by acknowledging Representative Glenn Brown, who is here, and you can thank him as we think about Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful. Do you see what these representatives do every day, working so hard to deliver this kind of weather for this conference, just to show how beautiful it is, Representative Brown. And the representative, on a very serious note, has been a terrific champion for the environment, has stood with us on some challenging issues, and I very, very much appreciated his leadership. He even came and sat through probably more hours of discussion about what we should do on the Chesapeake Bay issues than he cares to remember. But he was there, and he's rolled up his sleeves, and he's been dedicated and committed. Speaking of that family of 10, it does strike me that maybe that is my roots in anti-waste and anti-litter. Because picture this, 6 big brothers around a table with 3 sisters to boot, mom and dad, 2 German shepherds, a pony in the backyard. Well, there wasn't much waste. Whatever got put on that table, I will tell you, it got eaten. Nothing left over, nothing thrown out. Maybe those were the roots of it, I don't know. But it is a pleasure to welcome all of you again for this year's summit, for all of you to celebrate your successes of last year and to plan your good work for the year to come. I mostly wanted to just swing by this morning on a note of personal thanks. You all have contributed more than I can say to a revitalized, to an energized, to a growing, to an on-the-move Pennsylvania. You have put us on the map in a good way. The fact that I got to, on behalf of all of you, my friends at PennDOT in particular, who I just do want to say, for the work that we have done, we have followed in the footsteps of the fine programs that PennDOT had started long ago, so we're grateful for their leadership. But the fact that I got to go to Florida, representing all of you in the good work that you do every day to receive the Lady Bird Johnson Award for community beautification. I will tell you all of the things I've had the privilege to do in my career, and Dave was good enough to have you understand how long that career is. It will stand out always in my heart as a top and very special moment. And when you think then that this year we lost Lady Bird Johnson, that Pennsylvania had the honor of having her award in her last year of life, is something that is extraordinarily special in my mind, but it is completely 100% a tribute to what you do every day. I also think about things, Dave, you were at the table right away and supported our efforts in launching the Great Pennsylvania Cleanup. That is a true partnership, government playing a role, and the diversity of government from PennDOT, DCD, and DCNR, together with our National Guard in Pennsylvania, rolling up our sleeves and participating in that, but supported by the private sector. We couldn't do it if our landfills didn't step up, our landfill owners didn't step up and provide that free landfill space or help with drinks and refreshments for our many volunteers. And here we are again with a year that broke all records. Patty and Lennon could probably rattle off the numbers, but I think we had 140,000 people out this year, right? And you know, you can measure success in a lot of ways, and certainly the numbers speak for themselves. The literally tons of trash and litter that were picked up and taken off our streets and backyards. This year, a special focus. We have our leadership with Kathleen here with PCEE, bringing the schools and our litter-free school zone campaign as a heart of the Great Pennsylvania Cleanup. You can measure that success in not having things that are dangerous or injurious to students thrown in school fields or in parks where those children play. But I think what you can't measure is the spirit that you can only feel when you're out there and you are part of one of those community revitalization efforts, one of those pick it up PA efforts, where people feel so good at the end of that day, where they've worked hard, some sweat on their brow, some dirt on their boots, but they turn around and something is beautiful that had been a mess when they got there. People feel good about that, and you're providing the space that enables them to do that. That's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to enable someone to contribute. You know, all of us have tough challenges in our jobs. The representative and I are an exception to that rule because everything in Harrisburg is very easy. It's kumbaya. Sure, and some things are difficult. But you know what? I have an abiding faith in both the people of Pennsylvania and the United States more broadly. Sometimes people don't know how to contribute, how to get involved. If you can solve that piece for them, they give and they give and they give. Help them know where to plug in, where do I show up, what can I do, and then just get out of the way. And that's what we've seen with the Great Pennsylvania Cleanup. The Coles program is no exception to that. Now, Coles will forever have to remain just an acronym. You know why? Because it's a victim of its own success. It's no longer just about the anthracite part of Pennsylvania. Berks County, the city of Reading, now wants desperately to be in that game to get local people in that city caring again and not having it that people would dump on them or dump on their city. One of the most powerful pieces, you know, sometimes it's inspiration and sometimes it's encouragement, but every once in a while you do need to tell the bad guys you mean business. And Coles has been successful because from local police to local magistrates, everyone has been there to say, if we're going to break our back and we're going to clean this place up, you will not dirty it again. You will not dump on it. And from today forward, we're going to be a cleaner, more vital community, and you're not going to mess it up. That's made a huge difference, especially in more impoverished parts of our state. Why? Because there are people there who feel that they've been dumped on for generations. And they've sort of gotten used to some of what no community should get used to, the eyesores, the dangers, the things that cripple their economic opportunities. Why? Who wants to invest in a community that has hundreds of tires by the roadside, or waste coal, or trash, and other things that just drive people away? But they've gotten used to it, or they've seen their efforts in the past successful, but only for a brief moment in time. And as soon as they turn their back, well, the pickups are backing up again and the dumps are happening. Every once in a while, you know, something, you do have to step back and chuckle. Not that this is, well, at any rate, I'll just tell you the situation. So we had our first experience of a community, or it was a roadside under the Coles program with an extraordinary amount of effort by a lot of people, going from being a complete disaster to being cleaned up, and there was tons and tons of nasty trash that came out of that property. Well, we backed that up with two things. One was, again, the local security officials, police, magistrate, very much committing themselves that this property would stay clean. And then we added a little high tech to that. And the department has contributed funds for when these places are cleaned up to put the monitors in place so that if somebody dumps on it again, we have a better chance of catching them. Well, there was the instance where after it was all cleaned up, the truck backed up, all the stuff got dumped, and then knock, knock, knock on the guy's door. Hey, what did you do dumping all that trash up there in the place that we had just cleaned up? Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know, I don't even have a truck like that or what have you. And the difference in that conversation when the local police was able to pick out the picture to say, now, that would be you, wouldn't it? That would be your truck, wouldn't it? And that's your license plate. So things like that are all part of the equation, but it is because of what you do that we've been able to put those other pieces together. So thank you for what you are doing and for all that you contribute to Pennsylvania. Now, since I have a captive audience, however, and since we do have some big items on the agenda coming up in this fall session of the legislature. I do want to draw you in, if only briefly, into that conversation. So here, just as a small sampling of the things that I will be involved in anyway, the representative will be involved in many, many more because the agenda is very big. But let me share a couple. Our energy agenda and the hazardous sites cleanup program. All of which, from my mind, is right in the sweet spot of what all of you both have a right to be concerned about, a right to help inform the debate because of the work you do, and just a basic level of, count me in, I need to be part of that discussion. So on energy, two things. One, well, energy has two sides of it, electricity and fuels. So let me share quickly both. The governor has proposed something called the Penn Security's Fuel Initiative. What is it? Well, it's an effort that says, by golly, we can do better than to beg dictators for our energy. We can grow it here at home. And so it says that Pennsylvania will step up, hearing and heeding the call of President Bush, who has said we need to quintuple the amount of biofuels we're using in this country. Well, that's not going to happen by itself. States like Pennsylvania need to step up and say, Mr. President, count us in. And that's what the governor's initiative is about. Under his proposal, we would literally grow here in Pennsylvania a volume of biofuels equal to what we import from the Persian Gulf. Now, that means every gallon of gasoline would have 10% ethanol, and every gallon of diesel would have an ever-increasing amount up to about 20% of biofuel content in that gallon of diesel. Why do you need to care about that? Well, I think at least for three reasons. First, in terms of the sweet spot of your mandate, what you care about and keep Pennsylvania beautiful. Pennsylvania will be and is a more beautiful state if we can keep our farmers on the land, if we can hold on to some of our rural character, if we can keep some of that open space that is such an essential part of the Pennsylvania fabric, intact, growing, and vital. Well, we now have the biggest farmland preservation program in the country. That's a big, but guess what? It isn't enough. For every acre we preserve, we lose 3. Our farmers are losing the battle, and that makes Pennsylvania less beautiful. Biofuels number 1 is about enabling us to keep a green and vibrant and open space Pennsylvania. That's why you should care, because our farmers will have the opportunity to grow not only our food, but our fuel as well. The second reason I think you need to care is because every one of us has to dig in ever deeper for those dollars and cents to pay those fuel bills. This is the same theme I want to share with you on electricity. And when you're running your own personal budget, or as I have sat on the board of many a nonprofit, I know what it is when you've got those overhead bills that ever eat into those dollars you work so hard to try to win, and you want to put those dollars into work on the ground, into executing your mission. Well, I mean, I've seen these budgets where you're looking at 40 and 50% of every grant dollar you get has to go into overhead, has to go into running the basics of your operation, and that kills you. It just kills you. So you need to care about it that way. And yesterday, by the way, we broke all records with oil futures trading at nearly $80 a barrel. We need to keep those dollars at home. We need to figure out something different. Third, and not unrelated to why I think President Bush has called us in this direction as a nation, yesterday I was very, very pleased to bring to Pennsylvania a former cabinet colleague of mine from the Clinton administration, a gentleman who has served with 4 different presidents as Undersecretary of Defense, as the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, worked for 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. He was head of CIA when I was in the Clinton cabinet. And he came to Pennsylvania to say, America, we can't fiddle with this anymore. Every part of our foreign policy is being torqued because of our very, very dangerous dependence on dangerous parts of the world for a resource that is absolutely vital to everything America is about. He had a very interesting insight in laying some of that out yesterday, which I hadn't heard before, but for me, it was very compelling. He said, our problem in this discussion sometimes is people say, we'll never be independent of oil. We'll always need to have oil. He said, you know what? I'm here to tell you that's absolutely true. But that's not what this is about. What we have to do is break the back of oil as a strategic resource. We got to give ourselves some alternatives so that we use oil, but we're not governed by it. He said, that's the game. And that we can do, and in his mind, as someone who knows what's going on in the world in terms of America's interests, he said we can afford to wait not a second to do it. Last on that, in terms of the clock ticking, you know, every once in a while you wonder how some things get in the news and other things don't. So what wasn't in the news 2.5 weeks ago was an absolutely stunning announcement from the country of Mexico, and in particular, the Mexican state oil company called Pemex. Mexico is the second leading supplier of oil to the United States of America. We depend on Mexico. Mexico announced 2.5 weeks ago that in 7 years they will be out of oil for export. Now we talk about cellulosic ethanol and switchgrass and all of the benefit. If we started today, we would have our first crop of switchgrass that's harvestable in 7 years. We gotta get going. So for all of those reasons, please join us, help us to get the momentum so that we can carry this important initiative over the finish line in the legislature. Electricity, we've got a train wreck coming, folks. 10 years ago with electricity deregulation, which by the way I fully support, had one little detail in it for which not enough attention was paid. That detail was that as part of the deregulation deal, electricity rates would be capped for 10 years. Sounds good. It's been a nice ride for 10 years with those rates capped. But guess what? Time flies, the clock ticks, and we are a 1.5 years away from those rate caps coming off. Doesn't matter. In the state of Maryland, the rate caps came off, 70% increase in the price of electricity overnight. Pike County, Pennsylvania, which has already gone through this part of deregulation at the end of 2006, rate caps came off, 130% increase in the price of electricity overnight. I was joined by the superintendent of schools of Pike County in endorsing the governor's strategy, and she came to the podium with 2 bills in her hand. On Monday, we were paying $225,000 a year for electricity for our schools in Pike County. And on Tuesday, we were paying $465,000. They didn't budget for that. No one could budget for that. So why do you need to care about this? For a couple of reasons. One, obviously what I said before in terms of the squeeze on dollars and cents, we cannot afford, any of us, that kind of shock to the pocketbook. The second reason is the details of what the governor's proposing, conservation, because it's vastly cheaper than building new power lines. Frankly, they'll only drag dirty power from Ohio and West Virginia. That's missions critical for you all. You need to care about that. That the first thing in our energy arsenal is not going to be to drag dirty power from states to the west and south of us. We need something smarter and homegrown, and we should put conservation first because it's much cheaper to begin with. The other thing is keeping our economy vital. We all know it, whether it's domestically in the United States or you look overseas, the old adage or that it's jobs versus the environment, we know not to be true. We have to have a vital economy if we're going to have people caring about and paying attention to the environment, and vice versa. If we have got an economy where we've got skyrocketing triple-digit increases in electricity, you know what happened in Maryland? The week after the 70% increase, the largest employer in the state closed up business, 3,000 jobs lost. That's coming. We can't tolerate it as individuals, as families, and certainly not as nonprofits trying to keep this state vital and growing and alive. So that's electricity. Need you to roll up your sleeves and be with us there. And last, the hazardous sites cleanup program. We're in desperate straits there, folks. I think we can keep the program running until the end of December. That's because, frankly, I've changed the books and I'm shortchanging the federal government. As you know, we are legally obliged to pay the Commonwealth's obligations under the Superfund program and the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act program, RCRA. That amounts to about $7 million a year. Well, I basically decided that the general fund's going to have to pick that up because I need to keep the basic parts of the hazardous sites cleanup program going. Now that program obviously is vital for all of what we do, all of the waste management programs that are run through the Hazardous Sites Cleanup Program, but also I need you to pay attention to where the funding ideas are going. You may or may not like the idea that the governor has proposed a fee, an additional tipping fee on trash to pay for HASCA, because you know that recycling is dependent on those fees as well. So we can talk about that. But I think there's some other proposals you need to take a look at too. We have some senators who I think are trying very hard to find a solution to this problem. Senator Rafferty, for example, has been a terrific leader on the environment. He's proposed a bottle bill. Maybe that's a good idea. God bless him, he's one of the only guys standing up and saying, here's a new funding source and I'm willing to put my name out there, yes, saying we have to pay something here. But if you have a bottle bill, does that take the plastics, the aluminum that otherwise really supports local and county level recycling programs? Does it or does it not? We don't know, but we have to examine those questions and we don't have much time to do it. So I need to put that on your radar screen as well. Take a look at that issue. Give us your ideas as to how to sustain what obviously is a shared and vital program and help us find the way to pay for it without shortchanging other vital things we need to do to ensure a clean and vital environment in Pennsylvania. Enough for me. So much for just stopping by to say hello and thank you for all your good work. But you know what? Let me close by saying that I will be thrilled to come back next year where we celebrate our success in having saved the HASCA program, in having moved forward on an energy independence strategy, and of course, in having gotten at least 150,000 people out this year for the great Pennsylvania cleanup. Thank you all very much.